The subject is triangle of forces and the supreme entity. The supreme entity means the supreme cognitive principle. The cognition is the supreme entity and not the operative principle, because this cognitive principle is the transcendental entity and the operative principle or creative principle is functioning within the jurisdiction of consciousness. This universe is the creation of the operative principle within the jurisdiction, within the campus of the transcendental entity of the cognitive principle. When it operates, the operative principle creates something concrete, that is, the consciousness is transmitted into abstract, and abstract is metamorphosed into the quinkle mental entity. Then that operative principle is called the creative principle. In Sanskrit, we call the creative principle Maya, and the functional attributes, the collection of the functional attributes of this creative principle is nature. Though the creative principle is nature, it functions within the scope of consciousness. Prakrit functions, Shakti functions on the chest of Shiva. Shakti is an inanimate principle. She can dance, she can function only when she is permitted to do so by consciousness. Shiva Parama Shiva. So the supreme entity means Param Shiva, the supreme cognition. The cognitive principle is the invisible witnessing entity, witnessing an entire universe, both macrocosm and microcosm. Microcosm is the psychic counterpart of the supreme cognition, and microcosm the direct psychic counterpart of the unit cognition and the indirect psychic counterpart of the supreme cognition. This quinkle mental universe is a metamorphosed form of microcosm. I say this universe is the macro psychic connection and the microcosm is unit mind. The unit mind of Ram, Shyam, Jadu, Madhu is not the direct creation of microcosm. That is, it has not been created directly by the macrocosmic mind. It is the creation of the quinkle mental universe. The creation of matter, and matter is the creation of the supreme mind. Matter is the creation of macrocosmic mind. Unit mind is the creation of matter. As a result of internal clash and cohesion, when the external force starts functioning within the scope of matter and when it gets its center of activity within material structure, we say the external force has been converted into vital force. We say life has been created within matter when due to internal clash and cohesion matter gets powdered down. It is called mind. The basic form of mind, that is underdeveloped mind. As the result of clash and cohesion, we get metazoic structure, we get complicated mind, and so finally in this world of ours we get human structure. Because of this physical complexity, the mind has also become complex and complicated, and due to this complexity in unit mind, we have got several types of human forms in the physical world. Mind is controlled by hormones secreted from different glands and subglands. Those hormones control each and every propensity of human mind. That is why I always lay stress that in intuitional science, an aspirant should control the mind or its propensities which are being controlled by the glands and subglands. This is what is called sadhana. Intuitional practice. This is a science. Now the entire quinkle mental human universe is governed by the functional attributes of the operative principle, which is known as nature. Hence it cannot remain outside and go beyond the campus of the transcendental entity. When unit mind ideates on the supreme mind, it is transformed into the supreme mind. When spiritual aspirants develop implicit faith and love for the Supreme Father, they surrender themselves at the altar of the grandeur of the Supreme and become one with the Supreme Cognition. An aspirant wants physical oneness with the Supreme Cognition. This is called Nirvikalp Samadhi in Sanskrit. And the aspirant's feeling of oneness with the microcosm is Savikalp Samadhi. Now, human beings may be intellectually developed, but they function within their physical structures. Certain points of their brains act as nuclei, which help them to operate different functions and nerve cells and entire nerve functions. So they have to function under certain limits, and that is why they are called microcosmic. The microcosm create their own world. In your mind you can create many things, but those things are purely psychic bodies and bear no value for others. In your mind you have created an elephant. That elephant is being witnessed by you only, and nobody else can witness it. So it is purely yours and no one else has got anything to do with it. But because everything remains within the scope of microcosm, when he is thinking of an elephant in his mind, for you it is external. When you create the elephant within your mind and you create another man within your mind, that man of your mind is witnessing the elephant of your mind. For the man of your mind, that elephant is a reality, relative reality. Now, in psychic sphere, microcosm can create anything according to their desire, according to their cognition, but microcosm function under certain limitations. By nature, the microcosm is multi-purposive in motion, in motive, but unilateral in action, and the macrocosm is unipurposive in motive but multilateral in function. Macrocosm is multilateral. Microcosm is multi-purposive in motive. You want to become rich, you want to become a great man, you want to render social service, you want to do so many things, you cherish so many longings in your mind, but while functioning, you can do only one thing at a time, one work at a time. Macrocosm, however, is unipurposive in motive. His only motive is to create many objects and individuals and to help his progeny in all-round development. It is his only purpose. So he is unipurposive in motive but multilateral in action. He is doing so many things for the entire universe, for each and every entity. You are witnessing only your own mental faculty and your mental force, but he is witnessing everything in the microcosmic existence. He is witnessing faculty. His pervasive association with all the macrocosms is called Protejog, and his relationship with each and every individual unit is called Otejog. He has got direct relationship with each and every entity, and he has got collective relationship with the collective universe. That is why you can say that he is multilateral in action. That is why in the Purush Suktam of the Rig Veda, it has been stated, Sahasra Sirsa Purusar, Sahasra Akshar, Sahasra Path, Sa Bhumim, Visvato, Britva, Tyatistad, Sangulam. A microcosm functions with the help of only one brain, and the capacity of the brain is not more than its structure and nature. But he functions with the help of innumerable brains. All the brains are his creation, and the potentiality of so many brains lies within the scope of macrocosm. That is why none can challenge the authority of macrocosm. Sahasraksh, whenever you see with your own eyes, with the limited sight, your optical strength, but you are within the transcendental entity. But he being the transcendental entity, is witnessing everything without the help of any physical organ. So it has been said, he is Sahasra Aksha. He has many eyes, Sahasra Pada. Wherever you go with the help of your legs. But he has innumerable legs, because he has got innumerable legs. One foot is here, another foot is on another planet. For him, there is no special factor. That is why he is Sahasrapad. He is an all-pervading entity and not within the scope of chemical mental universe, nor in the scope of the abstract, but above that he is Atya Tisthad Dasangulam. I have already said in other Dharma Mahachakra that in a human body, the controlling point is a pituitary gland, the seat of consciousness which controls directly the conscious mind, indirectly the subconscious, and more indirectly the unconscious. He is witnessing not only your physical or abstract expressions, but above that your controlling of all these are being witnessed by him. So his existence is not only all-pervading within the realm of physicality and mental world, but your unit cognition is also being controlled and witnessed by him. Atyatisthad Dasangulam, he is above 10 fingers, measure, above the real award of pituitary gland, that is a pineal gland, above the realm of abstract and physicality. The supreme entity, the supreme Purusha, Purusha means pure, Pure Sete Jahasa Purusha, resides within each physical structure. He is Purusha because the supreme fundamental relative factors are created by him. The spatial, the temporal, and the personal factors and are within his campus. This is why whatever work has been done by these three factors, whatever will be done by these three factors comes to him. There is a slok in the Rig Veda where it is stated, Puruseva sarvam edam yad bhutam yad bhavyam. The Purush knows whatever was done, and Purusha will know whatever will be done in future also. Then you may say, Purusha does not know the present, he knows the future, but nothing has been stated regarding the present. You know that philosophically and psychologically there is nothing called present. There is past and there is future. What I am saying, it is a future for you, and when you hear it, it is past for me. Hearing by you and saying by me, may my saying and your hearing are not being done simultaneously. There is a gap. That is why in present, whatever is done by us, by microcosm, a portion of the past portion of the future correlated by the microcosm is called present. So philosophically and psychologically, there is past and there is future, and that is why in this sloka, it has been said that Parama Purusha knows the past and knows the future. Yad bhutam yad bhavyam. What will happen, will happen. He is the navel point of the creation. He is Lord of the navel point of creation. One may think that one is an educated person, one is a learned person, or that one is animal in human structure. All, however, are only human beings. Remember that an animal is also the creation of the Supreme Father. It is a beloved of the Supreme Father. The Father cannot hate his animal children. You know, in Tantra, when one first does sadhana, in that phase, one is not better than an animal. One's structure is that of a human, but internally, one is just like an animal. When that animal does sadhana, he or she recalls the Lord, O Lord, I may be an animal, I may be a Pashu, but thou art my Lord, I am Pasu, but you are my Pasupati. So in the first phase of sadhana, the supreme entity is addressed as Pasupati. After starting sadhana, one starts psychic fighting against the crude force functioning within the mind, the crude force functioning within the society, the crude force functioning within the family, and the crude force functioning within the country, one starts fighting, so one becomes veer. This virata in fighting is actual sadhana. This is life. Life is the constant fight against belligerent forces. Life is fight. When one starts to fight, one becomes a human in human structure. So in the second phase of sadhana, Pasupati becomes Vireshwar. It was another name of Lord Shiva. As a result of the fight, when this fighting tendency, the belligerent tendency becomes one's own, in that case one becomes Dev. Then one says, "O Lord, by your mercy I have become Dev, divine in human structure, and thou art my Lord, thou art Mahadev." So in the third stage, that very Lord becomes Mahadev. Pasupati becomes Vireshwar, then becomes Mahadev. According to the stages or phases of sadhana of the spiritual aspirant, this fight against the centrifugal force functioning in the world is actually the sadhana. You know, in each and every structure there are two forces, centripetal and centrifugal force. In the case of cosmological order, in the case of Brahmachakra, the centripetal force is called Vidya and the centrifugal force is called Avidya. So spiritual practice or the intuitional practice is the fight between Vidya and Avidya. Sadhana is to strengthen Vidya, the centripetal force, in one's movement towards the nave of the cosmological order. This cosmological nucleus is the nucleus of all other nuclei of the universe. This is the abode of supreme beatitude. Each and every nucleus of the universe gets shelter in supreme consciousness. That is why he is called Narayan. Ayan means shelter. Nar means operative principle. If one wants peace of permanent nature, if one has developed a longing for the supreme destiny, one has to lead all one's propensities towards this supreme nucleus, and this movement is called sadhana. While moving towards this supreme nucleus, one will have to fight against the centrifugal force, Avidya Shakti. In this fight against Avidya Shakti, one must have sufficient weapons. You know, the sadhak is a soldier. A soldier requires weapons. Sadhana is a fight in your internal sphere, in your mind. There you should have 10 weapons, 5 jam and 5 niyam. Similarly, in the fight against evil forces, in this crude physicality, you should have physical weapons. Those who want disarmament and those who want to ban the atom bomb are not friends of human society. The friends of human society wants to accelerate the speed of human society. Those advocating disarmament wants to retard the progress. Weapons you must have, as you should have control over your body and mind. There must be control, not abuse of your weapons. Now in this process, that is in the realm of intuitionalism, you should have 10 internal weapons, jam and niyam. Your progress in sadhana depends on jnana, karma and bhakti. Your actual progress is being affected by jnana and karma. But the final union with the Supreme, with the Mahadev, will be possible you when develop bhakti within you. In sadhana, you should remember that you have to develop bhakti in your mind, and this bhakti and you can get by regular sadhana and by rendering selfless service.